Imagine you're at, like, the most chaotic, deafening party of the year.
Oh, I think we've all been to that party.
Right. The music is blaring so loud, your ribs vibrate, strobe lights are flashing everywhere, and everyone is just shouting over each other to be heard.
Yeah, your nervous system is just entirely overloaded at that point.
Exactly. You can't process a single word anyone is saying. But then someone takes your hand, they pull you out of that sweaty crowd, lead you down a hallway, into a quiet room, and close the heavy door.
The relief would be instant.
It is. The silence just rings in your ears. And then that person leans in and just whispers. Because of that extreme contrast, that sudden deprivation of noise, that whisper is the loudest, most profound thing you've heard all night. It forces you to actually lean in.
You have to, like, physically adjust your posture just to receive the message. Your whole psychological state shifts from defense to deep attention.
Yes. And that exact psychological trick, using quiet to force a deafened audience to listen, is the foundational blueprint of the 61st International Art Exhibition of La Biennale di Venezia.
It really is the perfect analogy for it.
I'm Simona Cochi, digital journalist and your AI-enhanced cultural storyteller, and today we're taking a deep dive into the 2026 Venice Biennale. We're going to cut through all the noise and map out the absolute must-see pavilions for you.
And I am thrilled to be here as your resident contemporary art expert to unpack all of this, because this year's edition is, it's just completely unprecedented.
It is. And to understand any of this art, we really have to talk about the unusual, heavy emotional weight carrying this entire exhibition.
We do. The context here is essential, and it's deeply moving. The appointed curator for 2026 was Koyo Kouoh, and she was a visionary. I mean, the very first African woman ever selected to direct the Biennale Arte.
But then tragedy struck.
Yeah. She passed away tragically in May of 2025, less than 6 months after taking the role. And usually when a tragedy of this magnitude hits a global institution, there's a pivot, a replacement, a compromise.
But the Biennale didn't stop. With the blessing of Kouoh's family, the institution made this radical decision. They decided to execute her exact, uncompromised vision.
Right. She had already assembled her curatorial team from 5 continents. And the core philosophy for the exhibition had actually been finalized during a gathering under the shade of a mango tree in Dakar.
Which is just a beautiful image, and the title she chose under that tree was In Minor Keys.
Which operates brilliantly as a musical metaphor. In one clear sentence. It's a musical metaphor inviting you to lower the volume of the world's aggressive noise and listen to the quieter voices, the subtle gestures, and the margins that are usually ignored by the mainstream megaphone.
So it literally is that whisper in the quiet room.
Exactly.
And if we step into the physical space of the main exhibition, this isn't just theoretical. I mean, Kouoh selected 111 artists from 5 continents, and she didn't pick them for their institutional fame, right?
No, not at all. She chose them for their resonances and affinities. So how their creative practices actually converse with each other.
And the space itself, designed by Wolf Architects, reflects that. They hung these massive, beautiful indigo banners from the ceiling all the way to the floor.
Those banners act as physical thresholds. When you walk through them, you are stepping between different universes. And the design is inspired by the Japanese concept of komorbi.
Wait, komorbi, that's the phenomenon of sunlight filtering softly through the leaves of trees, right?
Yes, exactly. The environment is literally engineered to offer visitors a sense of relief and rest.
But, sunlight filtering through trees implies looking. And the fascinating twist of 2026 is that this is the most sonically oriented Biennale in history. Sound isn't just an accessory. Sound is the dominant language here.
It's everywhere.
And I have to ask, because I struggle with this a bit, in a modern era where every single global event is meticulously engineered for Instagram and TikTok, isn't it an incredible risk to build an exhibition that is fundamentally unphotographable?
It's a huge risk.
Yeah.
But that risk is Koyo Kouoh's entire point. Yeah, by making it unphotographable, she strips away your ability to passively consume it through a screen. You can't just snap a selfie and walk away. A soundscape requires you to be physically present. It uses your body. It demands that we remember how to listen rather than just consume a visual spectacle.
Wow. You have to surrender to the moment. And that demand for physical presence is the perfect lens for our 7 must-see pavilions. Let's start with a pavilion that literally deprives you of your primary sense of sight. The Vatican Pavilion, the Holy See.
Right. Their exoprint is titled The Ear is the Eye of the Soul. And it's situated in a 17th century Carmelite monastic garden. You don't look at religious statues here. You are handed a pair of headphones.
When they track your location, right?
Yes, spatial tracking technology registers exactly where you step, so the audio landscape shifts seamlessly based on your physical location in the garden.
The cognitive dissonance of this is just wild to me. You are walking through this ancient, intensely traditional spiritual garden, and suddenly you hear FKA Twigs surrounded by the hyper-realistic buzzing of bees.
Oh, it's surreal.
And then you take a few steps, and punk icon Patti Smith is whispering directly into your ear with these ambient shifts by Brian Eno swelling in the background. It is so magical that the Vatican is using American pop culture icons to create this unphotographable spiritual experience.
But that dissonance bridges the gap between the human and the divine. By stripping away visual religious tropes, the Vatican Pavilion asks you to consider sound itself as a spiritual medium.
Incredible. So from that deep spiritual quiet, let's move to a space where the quietness of the art violently clashes with massive political noise. The United States Pavilion, titled Call Me the Breeze.
Yes, featuring the artist Alma Allen.
To understand this room, we have to look at the turbulent selection process. The guidelines issued by the State Department for this Biennale were shaped by the Trump administration's cultural policies. And those guidelines explicitly banned proposals centered on diversity and equity in favor of showcasing undeniable American excellence.
Right, which was a sharp pivot from recent years.
So understanding that loud political mechanism completely changes how you interact with the art that was chosen. Alma Allen creates these massive biomorphic wood sculptures, and he works with walnut burl.
Which is essentially botanical scar tissue.
Exactly. A tree suffers trauma, a fungal infection, or an injury, and the grain of the wood twists into these complex knots to heal itself.
So think about that friction. You have an exhibition curated through a highly publicized, politically charged mandate. And the objects sitting in the center of that loud room are these formally beautiful, perfectly silent pieces of physical trauma.
They aren't shouting back, they're just politically quiet objects bearing their scars. But I want to pivot here because our next stop feels like it completely shatters the minor keys rule. The Austrian Pavilion.
Ah, yes. SeaWorld Venice.
It is the most viral sensation of 2026, choreographed by Florentina Holzinger, and it is extreme visual noise. You walk in, and there are naked performers suspended in the air from a giant bell.
It pulls absolutely no punches.
There are robot dogs, people riding jet skis indoors, and a massive tank of purified human urine. So doesn't this viral, extreme spectacle completely contradict Koyo Kouoh's philosophy?
On the surface, I mean, it seems like a total contradiction. It's incredibly loud. But within the tradition of feminist performance art, Holzinger is actually operating on a parallel track.
How so?
Well, Kouoh uses extreme quiet to force you out of a passive mindset. You have to lean in. Holzinger is doing the exact same thing, just using visceral shock. When you're confronted with naked flesh and a mechanical robot dog, you cannot be a passive consumer. She's using the extreme body to demand the same urgent physical presence and reaction that Kouoh's quiet soundscapes do.
Okay, I see the thread. It's shock versus silence, but the goal is presence. And that intense physical confrontation makes our next pavilion, Japan, so poignant. If Austria uses shock, Japan uses tender participation.
Yes, I.R. Kawanach's installation, Grass Babies, Moon Babies, it's definitely the most accessible pavilion this year.
Inside, there are 208 baby dolls. But you aren't allowed to just look. Visitors have to physically pick up and carry one of these dolls, and they weigh about 5 kilos, around 11 pounds, so they have the actual heft of a real human infant.
It's surprisingly heavy when you hold it.
And then you have to change its diaper. Hidden inside that diaper is a QR code. You scan it, and you have to read a poem aloud to the infant.
It's a profound manipulation of human instinct, linking to global themes like declining birth rates and the invisible labor of care. By forcing strangers to bear the physical weight of a child and read it a poem, he forces you to reckon with what it actually means to nurture the future.
From that intimate human scale of a baby doll, we zoom out to a massive mythic scale in a former shipyard for the Iceland Pavilion.
Pocket Universe by Asta Fanny Sigurdardóttir.
She takes this cavernous space and turns it into a dreamlike blue world featuring this surreal Lynchian boat. And the cultural crossover moment here was huge.
Oh, when Bjork DJ'd the opening.
Yes. It completely broke the internet. It brilliantly bridged the fashion, music, and art worlds.
Which is a perfect segue, because that bridging of worlds leads us to the countries making their very first appearance. This embodies Koyo Kouoh's lifelong mission to center voices from the global south.
The 7 debuts, we're talking about Guinea, Nauru, Qatar, Sierra Leone, Vietnam. But the focus really shifts to Somalia's pavilion.
Located at Palazzo Caboto, titled Sad Dexley.
It features Warsaw-Shire's spatialized poetry.
Right, where the audio is physically mapped around the room. You literally have to walk through the words.
And alongside that, you have Ian Farr's textile memories. This pavilion is the living proof of Kouoh's enduring legacy.
It absolutely is. And speaking of legacy, we end our pavilion tour with a meditation on memory and grief. The German pavilion titled Ruin.
The emotional gravity here is heavy. Much like Kouoh, artist Henrik Naumann tragically died just before the Biennale opened. Her posthumous installation explores Germany's fractured memory through domestic design.
She uses everyday furniture to show how political ideologies furnish our living rooms.
And the exterior is staggering. Sung Tu wrapped the 1909 Imperial Pavilion facade in a mosaic of a socialist housing block. It's like turning a building inside out, physically covering one form of historical power with the ghosts of another.
And those overlapping histories and ghosts bring us to the true underlying friction of the 2026 Biennale. The controversy that nobody is really talking about.
Right. I mean, the protests during opening week were widely covered. The demonstrations supporting Palestine, the calls to exclude Israel and Russia.
And we should note, Russia did return, but with a pavilion of young poets and musicians called The Tree is Rooted in the Sky.
Exactly. And the Golden Line jury even saw resignations. The geopolitical reality is deafening. But what is the deeper controversy you're seeing?
The deeper question is, what happens to culture when the political world becomes deafeningly loud and art actively chooses to turn its back on spectacle? What does it mean to work in minor keys instead?
If the most viral image of the Biennale is a naked person on a jet ski, but the most profound experience is a voice whispering in a garden that no camera can ever capture, how does an exhibition about listening survive a world that has completely forgotten how to listen?
That is Kouoh's ultimate provocation. Her refusal to reduce art to pure politics is an intentional act. By retreating to the quiet, the intimate, and the unphotographable, art reclaims its power to create genuine, long-lasting change.
Wow. Well, if you want to experience this radical quiet, the Venice Biennale runs from May 9 to November 22, 2026.
Wear comfortable shoes. You'll be walking a lot.
Definitely. And make sure to follow The Italian Way on YouTube for Simona Cochi's ongoing, on-the-ground video coverage of these individual pavilions.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. What if the ultimate act of radical rebellion in our hyper-connected, visually saturated modern age isn't speaking louder, but choosing to close our eyes, sit in the shade, and simply listen? Because sometimes the quietest things are actually the largest things of all.
So true. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. This review has been researched, analyzed, and produced by Simona Cochi, digital journalist and producer from The Italian Way, an expert in the field of digital valorization of arts, design, and fashion events and collections, who curated and authored the contents of this review. The journalistic platform Simona Cochi The Italian Way has been recognized as an authoritative instrument for digital cultural heritage, achieving a market valuation that reflects its high institutional standing. This milestone consolidates its role as both a journalistic and strategic asset, contributing to the enhancement of national heritage and aligning with international digitalization frameworks, including innovation-driven cultural policies.